Hey everyone, welcome to Heaven Awaits. As you know, this channel has been dedicated to exploring near-death experiences and what waits for all of us beyond death. Today, I'm branching out with something new, while keeping that same spirit of exploration. These motivational segments will complement my usual NDE content, offering another way to contemplate life's deeper meanings. No preachiness intended, just honest reflections that I hope resonate with you all. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee or tea, and let's get into our first video, aptly titled, "We All Face Storms in Our Lives." Some arrive with warning, dark clouds gathering on the horizon, giving us time to prepare. We see them coming, feel the pressure dropping in the air around us, notice the subtle signs that something powerful approaches. Others strike without notice, violent and unexpected, leaving us gasping for breath. One moment, standing on solid ground, the next swept into churning waters that threaten to pull us under. These storms come in many forms: loss, failure, heartbreak, illness, betrayal. The divisive winds of political upheaval that threaten to tear apart communities, families, and even nations. They all challenge everything we've built, everything we are. They test not just our strength, but our very identity. But here's what I've learned about storms. They reveal what's truly solid in our lives. When everything superficial is stripped away, we discover what remains, what was always there, waiting to be found. When the winds howl and the ground beneath you feels uncertain, you discover your true foundation. Not the facade you've constructed for others to see, but the core of who you actually are. The storm doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't care about what you think you deserve. It simply is. Raw, powerful, and indifferent to your suffering. And in that raw reality, you find yourself stripped of pretense, facing a fundamental choice. Will you be defined by the storm or by how you weather it? Will you surrender to its force or find something within yourself that even the fiercest tempest cannot touch? I've learned that strength isn't about never falling. It's about how many times you're willing to rise. It's about the quiet determination that whispers, "Not today," when defeat seems inevitable. It's about the hand that reaches for solid ground when the current threatens to drag you deeper. I've learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward, even when fear wraps itself around your throat. It's taking that next breath, that next step, that next moment, even as your mind screams that you cannot possibly continue. Such as adding this new stuff to the channel. I've learned that hope isn't a fragile thing. It's the most resilient force in the universe, capable of surviving the darkest nights. It's the small flame that refuses to be extinguished, no matter how fierce the wind, no matter how heavy the rain. When the storm rages around you, and every instinct screams to surrender, remember this. This moment of pain is not your permanent address. It is merely a difficult road you're traveling through. You are not the first to face this darkness. Countless others have stood where you stand now, felt what you feel, questioned what you question. Their footprints surround you, invisible but present, reminding you that this path, though difficult, is walkable. You are not alone in your struggle, even when you feel completely lost. Connections exist, hands reaching out, voices calling through the storm, hearts that understand, without explanation, what you're enduring. And this storm, like all storms, will pass. No tempest, however violent, lasts forever. The skies will clear, the winds will calm, the ground will dry. This is the nature of storms. They are powerful, but temporary visitors in our lives. What remains after the clouds clear isn't just survival, it's transformation. The person who emerges from the tempest is rarely the same one who entered it. Something fundamental shifts when we discover what we're capable of enduring. Your scars tell a story of endurance, not failure, endurance. Each one marks a moment when something tried to break you and failed. They are not symbols of weakness, but testimonies to your capacity to heal. to continue, to integrate even your wounds into who you are becoming. Your calluses speak of persistence, of hands that kept working, feet that kept walking, a heart that kept beating even when giving up seemed the only sensible option. They are the body's way of saying, I have been tested by friction and have grown stronger in response. Your eyes, now having seen both darkness and light, hold a depth that was impossible before. They recognize nuance where once they saw only black and white. They perceive beauty in places others overlook. They hold compassion born from intimate knowledge of suffering. So face the storm, not because it's easy, but because the alternative, allowing yourself to be diminished by fear, exacts a higher cost than confrontation ever could. Consider the wisdom of those who build their lives on solid foundations. When everything is tested by the elements, when the rains come down and the streams rise and the winds blow and beat against what they've built, they remain standing. Because what matters isn't the absence of storms, but the strength of what we've built to withstand them. Stand your ground, not out of stubbornness or pride, but from the quiet knowledge that you are worthy of defending, that your dreams deserve protection, that your purpose here is not yet fulfilled. Bend when you must, but refuse to break. There is wisdom in flexibility, in recognizing when rigid resistance will only lead to shattering. The oak that cannot bend may snap in the gale, while the willow, yielding but rooted, survives to stand tall when calm returns. Because you are not made of glass or paper, you are forged of sterner stuff, tempered by fire, tested by wind, shaped by the very forces that sought to destroy you. In your darkest moments, remember, pressure creates diamonds, fire refines gold, and the most turbulent waters often forge the smoothest stones. And when this storm passes, and it will pass, you'll look back and understand. It was never about avoiding the storm. It was about discovering the immeasurable strength that lived within you all along. The storms reveal us to ourselves. They strip away our illusions and pretenses. They force us to confront questions we've been avoiding. What truly matters? What will I fight for? Who am I when everything familiar is washed away? In those moments of brutal clarity, we often discover resources within ourselves we never knew existed. Reservoirs of courage untapped in easier times, wells of determination that only adversity could reveal. A capacity for resilience that surprises even ourselves. Sometimes the storm changes our direction entirely. What seemed important before now appears trivial. Dreams we pursued relentlessly no longer call to us. New possibilities emerge from the wreckage of what was lost. This redirection, though painful, often leads us closer to our authentic path. Other times, the storm confirms our course. We emerge with greater conviction, deeper commitment, clearer purpose. What was once merely a goal becomes a calling. What was a preference becomes a non-negotiable value. The winds that sought to deter us instead fill our sails. Either way, we are changed. Not broken, changed. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, creating something more beautiful than the original unbroken piece. So too do our storms, and subsequent healing transform us into something more precious, more unique, more authentically ourselves. Perhaps the greatest revelation is this: we never truly know our capacity until we are tested beyond what we believed possible. The limits we imagined for ourselves, of endurance, of courage, of hope, turn out to be lines drawn in sand, not boundaries set in stone. Each storm survived expands our conception of what's possible. Each challenge overcome rewrites the story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we can withstand. Each difficult passage navigated builds confidence for whatever may come next. So when the storm clouds gather, and they will gather, remember that discomfort is not danger. Remember that fear is not failure. Remember that struggle is not defeat. Remember, too, that no storm is wasted if it leads to growth. Even in your darkest hour, seeds are being planted. Even in your most painful moments, something valuable is taking root. Even when progress seems impossible, transformation is occurring beneath the surface. The poet Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." These storms, these wounds they create, are not just moments of suffering. They are potential thresholds to greater wisdom, deeper compassion, more authentic living. So let the storm come. Face it not with dread, but with the quiet confidence of one who knows that beyond the darkness lies dawn. Beyond the struggle lies strength. Beyond the challenge lies change that serves your highest good. And when you emerge, weathered but whole, tested but triumphant, you'll carry with you not just the memory of survival, but the unshakable knowledge that within you dwells a power greater than any storm could ever be. We often speak of storms as if they are only destructive forces. But consider this: storms are also agents of renewal. They clear away what is dead. They redistribute resources. They create space for new growth. In nature, many ecosystems depend on periodic disruption to maintain their health and diversity. Perhaps our personal storms serve a similar purpose. They clear away what no longer serves us: outdated beliefs, toxic relationships, paths that lead nowhere. They redistribute our energy and attention toward what truly matters. They create space for new possibilities that couldn't take root in the dense undergrowth of our comfortable routines. Consider the forest after a fire. What appears at first as devastation soon reveals itself as opportunity. Sunlight reaches the forest floor for the first time in decades. Seeds that lay dormant for years suddenly spring to life. Species that couldn't compete in the old environment find their chance to flourish. So too with our lives after devastation. What feels like an ending often contains the seeds of a new beginning. What seems like loss creates space for discovery. What appears as destruction is often the necessary prelude to creation. This is not to diminish the real pain of difficult times. The storm hurts. The fire burns. The earthquake shatters. These experiences extract a genuine toll that cannot and should not be minimized. But acknowledging the pain doesn't mean we must be defined by it or limited to seeing only its destructive aspects. There is a difference between being broken and being broken open. When something breaks, it loses its function, its purpose, its integrity. When something breaks open, it reveals what was hidden inside. It releases potential. It expands beyond its former boundaries. Many of us can point to moments in our lives when we were broken open by difficulty, when loss created capacity for deeper love, when failure taught us something success never could, when illness awakened us to the preciousness of health, when rejection led us to a truer acceptance of ourselves. These transformations rarely happen easily or quickly. There is no rushing the process of weathering a storm. There is no shortcut through grief or challenge or disruption. Each has its own timeline, its own rhythm, its own lessons that unfold at their own pace. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is simply to endure, to place one foot in front of the other when we cannot see the path ahead, to keep breathing when each breath feels like a deliberate choice, to remain open to possibility when all evidence points toward despair. This kind of endurance is not mere survival. It is a profound act of faith, faith in the resilience of the human spirit, faith in the cyclical nature of experience, faith that meaning can emerge from even the most seemingly senseless suffering. It's worth remembering that some of history's most influential figures were shaped decisively by their storms. Their greatest contributions often emerged directly from their greatest challenges. Their wounds became sources of wisdom. Their difficulties developed their character. Their obstacles opened pathways they might never have discovered otherwise. We see this pattern repeated across fields and throughout time. artists who translate personal tragedy into universal beauty, leaders whose experiences of marginalization fuel their passion for justice, scientists whose failures lead to unexpected discoveries, teachers whose struggles inform their ability to guide others. What if your current storm contains similar potential? What if the very thing that feels most overwhelming right now is preparing you for a contribution only you can make? What if your unique combination of strengths and wounds is exactly what someone else will need? There's a profound difference between asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and "What might this be preparing me for?" The first question often leads to resentment and stagnation. The second opens pathways to growth and possibility. This shift in perspective doesn't happen all at once. It's normal to rage against the storm, to question its purpose, to wish desperately for easier circumstances. These reactions are human, natural, and sometimes necessary parts of the process, but they need not be where we permanently reside. Over time, with patience and gentle persistence, we can train ourselves to look for the growth within the struggle, the opportunity within the obstacle, the light within the darkness, not in a naive or superficial way that denies reality, but in a profound way that expands our conception of what reality includes. This expanded vision doesn't make us immune to future storms. If anything, it makes us more aware of their inevitability. But it changes our relationship to them. We begin to trust, not that life will always be easy, but that we have what it takes to weather whatever comes our way. We begin to understand that our capacity for resilience isn't a fixed trait, but a dynamic skill that grows stronger with each challenge faced. Like a muscle that develops through resistance, our ability to bounce back increases each time we're called upon to do so. We begin to recognize the subtle but crucial difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the storm itself, the unavoidable difficulty that life presents. Suffering is what we add to pain through resistance, resentment, and rumination. We cannot always avoid pain, but we can learn to reduce unnecessary suffering. We begin to appreciate that vulnerability isn't weakness, but courage in its purest form. It takes tremendous strength to remain open in the face of difficulty, to allow ourselves to be affected rather than armored, to acknowledge our needs rather than deny them. And perhaps most importantly, we begin to see that our storms connect us to the broader human experience. They remind us that despite our differences, we share common vulnerabilities, common fears, common hopes. They reveal our fundamental interconnectedness in ways that comfort can sometimes obscure. There is wisdom in the ancient truth that when one person falls, another can help them up. We are stronger together, a cord of many strands that is not easily broken. In your storm, remember that countless others have weathered similar winds, and many stand ready to offer shelter. There is a solidarity among storm survivors, a recognition that passes between those who have faced the tempest and emerged changed, but intact. It transcends words, defies explanation, and creates bonds that can last a lifetime. So if you find yourself in the midst of a storm right now, if the winds are howling and the rain is pelting and solid ground seems like a distant memory, know this: you are not alone in the tempest. You are part of an ancient and ongoing human story of challenge and response, disruption and adaptation, suffering and growth. Your particular storm has its own specific characteristics, its own unique challenges, but the fundamental dynamics of weathering it connect you to countless others who have faced their own versions of darkness and emerged into light. Draw strength from their examples, learn from their wisdom, allow their stories to remind you that what feels impossible in one moment becomes a memory in the next, that what seems unbearable today becomes the foundation of tomorrow's resilience. And remember that someday, perhaps sooner than you think, your storm story may be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their courage. rekindle their hope, renew their determination to continue. For now, simply do what the storm demands. Be present, be patient, be persistent, trust the process, honor your limits while continuing to test their boundaries, rest when you need to, move when you can. The storm will do what storms do. It will challenge, disrupt, and perhaps destroy parts of what was. Your task isn't to control the uncontrollable, but to respond with all the wisdom, courage, and resilience you can muster, and then to notice how these qualities grow through their very exercise. And when the storm passes, as it eventually will, take time to acknowledge not just what was lost, but what was found. Take inventory, not just of the damage, but of the discoveries. Take note, not just of what changed around you, but of how you yourself were transformed. For in the final accounting, it is not the storms themselves, but our responses to them that define us. Not what happens to us, but what we do with what happens. Not the challenges we face, but the strengths we develop in facing them. So face the storm with everything you have, knowing that everything you have will be more tomorrow than it is today. Face it not alone, but as part of a vast community of fellow travelers who understand the territory of difficult times. Face it not as a victim, but as a participant in the ancient human drama of resilience and renewal. And know that whatever the storm may take from you, there are things it cannot touch: your essential dignity, your capacity for growth, your ability to make meaning from even the most difficult experiences, your fundamental connectedness to the larger whole of which you are an irreplaceable part. These remain steadfast and unchanging throughout even the fiercest tempests. They are your birthright, your foundation, your true home, the ground of being to which you can always return, regardless of external circumstances. In this truth lies a peace that no storm can disturb, a strength that no challenge can diminish, a hope that no darkness can extinguish. It awaits your discovery, not somewhere in a distant future when circumstances improve, but here and now, in the very midst of whatever storm you face. Reach for it. Rest in it. Allow it to sustain you through the darkest nights and the fiercest winds, and trust that as you do, you are not just surviving your storm, you are being shaped by it into someone wiser, deeper, more compassionate, and more alive than you were before the first clouds gathered on your horizon. That's it for this first video in this series. Let me know what you thought. I definitely take your comments to heart, so remember, you all will be the foundation on how these things sound going forward.